Good morning, church. It's that time of the week just for us to share a short devotion, but just to say, I hope things are going well with the extended lockdown there at home, and that you're just managing all the frustrations and all the stuff that happens as a result of this stuff. But our prayers are with you. Continue just to be strong. We're continuing today in our series on the word stand. We've spoken about standing firm. Today I want to talk about what it means to stand together. There is no more relationally intense group of people on the planet than the church. Some of the terminology that the Bible uses to explain this or to exemplify this truth are found in the intensity of a family. We read in the scriptures that God looks at his children as being a family, incredibly relationally intense. Then he takes it to another level where he talks about the church being like a body. There is no more relationally intense thing on the planet probably than your own human body. When one part hurts and the other part hurts, when one part is sick, the whole body is sick. And there's this picture of mutual dependence and cooperation that takes place within a family and a body. And Jesus said that's like the church. The church operates best when people stand together. Now, we realize that in today's world that is an incredibly high ideal. God's ideals are always high. When you think of the fact that we're so different, we come from different racial groups, we come from different cultural groups, we come from different socioeconomic groups, we have different genders, different ages, pretty much different in pretty much every area of our lives. And God says, despite your differences, we need to, people, stand together. If we had to wait for everybody to be in agreement on everything, none of us are ever going to stand together. But there are really three reasons that I just want to throw out to you today and ask you to think about these things. The first reason that God tells us to stand together is because, very simply, our survival depends upon it. The Bible tells us very clearly in Mark 3 verse 24, it says, if a kingdom is divided against itself, it cannot possibly stand. Unity of standing together despite our diversity is critical for the church to remain what the God wants it to be. If you understand it from a military point of view, you know, the fact of survival in the military is always a big deal. When you're in a battle, you will depend upon the people around you to help you survive, even if you don't like them, even if you're different to them, even if you come from different backgrounds, different racial groups. Just to survive, you're going to make sure that you support and stand together with one another. Now, the Bible talks about the fact that God causes us to stand together, but we recognize that Satan's greatest tool is to bring division amongst us. That whole thesis of divide and conquer is one of Satan's greatest tools. He just knows that if he can cause us to divide in the church, we lose so much of the power that the church should be evidencing, simply because Satan knows how to divide us. And so he plays this game continually with us, and he will do it very effectively many times. He causes us to sort of see one another differently. He causes us, first of all, to see the faults in one another before we see the good in one another. And we tend to be drawn towards the negative in a person before we look at that which is positive. People, I have yet to find a person who's less than 80% good. There's 20% that I may not like. There's 20% of everybody that I may not agree with. But the sad thing is, by human nature, we tend to be moving and look more at the negative, the 20% that is negative, rather than at the 80% that is good. And Satan will use this tool to bring division to the body. If you have a look even at Jesus, the way he chose his disciples, for goodness sake, Jesus chose Peter to be a disciple. Peter, for much of Jesus' ministry, as much as there was good in Peter, he was the source of many frustrations for Jesus. He was too loud, he was too verbose, he was short-tempered, he was impulsive. And yet Jesus included him in his team. Jesus made Peter one of his closest friends. That so different was Peter to everybody else. And yet Jesus never rejected him. Jesus never alienated him. Jesus never made him feel bad for who he was or for the type of person he was. Jesus' love for him was all embracing. And he said, Peter, we will stand together. So that's the first reason. We stand together by God's command simply because our survival depends upon it. The second reason that we stand together is simply because many hands make light work. And we need one another because we've got a job to do. And no single person, no single church can do everything. That's why the power of volunteerism is incredibly applicable in the church. I don't know of another organization, if that's the right word, or organism might be a better word, where volunteer intensity is as high as it is in the church. And God blesses volunteer intensity when people draw together. I love that verse in Deuteronomy 32 where God says, one will put 1,000 to flight, but two will put 10,000 to flight. Now, mathematically, that doesn't make any sense. If one puts 1,000 to flight, then two should put 2,000 to flight. But because of the power of unity and the power of compatibility, we see this growth and this power being exponential when people stand together. It's a great thing. The third reason is simply this, and I love this probably above all else, is that when we are unified and stand together, our unity commands the blessing of God. Matthew 18 says this, if two of you agree about anything on earth and ask, it will be done. Where two or more are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. When two or three or more, or 300, 600, 1,000 people gather together in God's name, there's something that excites God about his people coming together that you don't get as an individual one-on-one. That's a different dynamic altogether. So when we as a church stand together, when we are committed to the cause of Christ together, it brings us power, it brings with us the guarantee of the presence of God, and obviously with that, the blessing of God. So let's stand this week in the midst of all that is going on around us. Let's make sure that we don't think we have to stand alone. Don't try and be a lone ranger through this thing. Lone ranger only operates in movies. In real life and in the church, it doesn't cut it. So let's stand together with one another. Despite our differences and our diversity, let's find unity and a unity of cause and purpose amidst all of that, which causes us sometimes to be different. But that's okay. Different is not wrong. Different is just different. So I hope today and in this week that standing together will become a theme that you will think about as we do this as a church together. Thanks for hearing me out, guys. Have a great week and keep safe. And we're praying for you.